play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Got it.
Okay, very good. The first one, gutted medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, aka deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
Encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. So what have the results been? Since Trump took office on January 20th, 9 detainees have died in ICE custody. In fact, in Trump's first month in office, more detainees died in ICE custody than at any time since fiscal year 2020. Congressional Democrats have engaged in oversight activities of immigration facilities across the country, from Florida, where a 44-year-old Haitian woman died in ICE custody, to Newark, New Jersey, where 3 of our Democratic colleagues visited an immigration detention facility to ensure the humane treatment of detainees. This wasn't about going in and breaking nobody out, y'all, especially when there were cameras rolling everywhere. That's not what they were there to do. Now, in a breathtaking act of executive obstruction of congressional oversight and the unprecedented weaponization of the Department of Justice, we have an interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey who for years has argued in court that Donald Trump is above the law. She has announced criminal charges against Congresswoman McIver for, quote, impeding and interfering with law enforcement. However, our power as members of Congress to conduct oversight is found in the Constitution and federal law. In fact, federal law explicitly prohibits DHS from, quote, preventing a member of Congress from entering for the purpose of conducting oversight any facility operated by or for the Department of Homeland Security used to detain or otherwise house aliens, or to make any temporary modification at any such facility that in any way alters what is observed by a visiting member of Congress. It is against the law. Full stop. Separately, the court has consistently held that the speech and debate clause of the Constitution protects individual members from prosecution for legislative acts, including, quote, fact-finding, field investigations, and information gathering. The court has consistently held that the primary purpose of the speech and debate clause is to, quote, prevent intimidation by the executive and before a possibly hostile judiciary. So let's call this for what it is. This administration is criminalizing legislative oversight, and the Republicans on this committee are helping them to do so. Rep. McIver didn't engage in interference. It was ICE that engaged in interference while members of Congress attempted to conduct legitimate oversight of ICE facilities. Everyone, whether you are American or not, should be deeply disturbed and worried about Trump's abuse of power. They're attacking universities for teaching things they don't like. They're attacking law firms for representing clients that they don't like. This hearing and these charges are an attempt at political intimidation. The 3 members in Newark were exercising their constitutional duties to check an out-of-control executive branch. This entire situation happened because of the unjust arrest of Mayor Baraka. And not only were the members invited in and given a tour of the facility, this was after they so-called had broken the law. Now, I don't know about y'all, but where I'm from in Texas, I can tell you that I'm not used to having law enforcement see a crime happen right in front of their faces and then say, never mind, we'll just go about our business. In fact, why don't you go ahead and come on in? Come on in, we gonna do this tour because, oops, we did make a mistake because technically by law, we are supposed to allow you in. And wait a minute, while you're here, do y'all want something to drink? We got refreshments for you as well. And then after you conduct this oversight, and you actually gave a clean bill of health because you were never there to disrupt, you were always there to do your duty. They came out and they said, everything looks good. And then it wasn't at that moment that they decided to arrest members. It wasn't the next day. In fact, even as I sit here today, no member has been arrested. Now you tell me how many times you can see the robber go in the bank, steal the money, and then they say, well, never mind, we'll think about this later. That is what you call politicizing. And that is what we are here to talk about is wrong. But we got a few other issues with ICE right now, so I'm gonna get to them in a second. The DOJ, as I said already, has already dropped the charges against the mayor. Look, they're coming after everyone who uses their constitutional rights and duties to speak truth to power. The press, the courts, and now members of Congress. And to be perfectly honest, I had my team do the research. Under no other president, Democrat or Republican, can we find an incident where they have tried to arrest members of Congress. This is absolutely absurd that they were out there simply doing their duty. We have never seen not less oversight that we need right now, it's more. In fact, I'm gonna tell you, actually, I'm not gonna tell you. I can show you better than I can tell you. Roll the tape.
Shocking video showing the moment ICE agents smashed a car window and forcibly removed a man in New Bedford. 29-year-old Juan Francisco Mendez has no criminal record and was...
Stop! Stop, ma'am! Stop! Stop!
Definitely a chaotic scene on Eureka Street Thursday as Worcester police and ICE agents detained a mother and her 16-year-old daughter. That girl's face slammed into the ground as she was taken into custody. They have not been identified. Worcester police said officers were dispatched to the area for a report of a federal agent surrounded by about 24 people. When police arrived, they say the teen daughter was...
Agents smashed his window and dragged him out while his small children cried in the back seat and his partner recorded the incident.
You can't tell me that somebody in this building shouldn't do their jobs because these people are out of control. You're talking about arresting members of Congress? These masked agents are running around acting this way? This is not okay. This shouldn't be about politics. We all should be on the same side saying we will not stand for this type of activity, but instead, they want to pretend like it's members of Congress that are the thugs. It's members of Congress that are the ones that are stoking this kind of violence. Let me tell you what those members of Congress were doing. They were trying to make sure that there would not be another mother that would lose her life in ICE custody as it was Mother's Day weekend. They decided that they just wanted to make sure that people were safe because that is who we are supposed to be in this country. And honestly, for anybody that considers themselves to be a Christian, they should care about treating people in a humane way. And they should also care about due process. Everyone in this country under our Constitution is due process. With that, I will yield. But we do have a system, and that system is supposed to be based upon the Constitution. And right now, like literally due process comes from the Constitution. This should be the highest protections that one can have in the land. And right now, it seems like y'all don't care about the Constitution unless it's the Second Amendment. And that's misinterpreted as well, okay? There's other amendments to the Constitution. And we don't get to just change it because our fearless leader says that he doesn't like certain parts of the Constitution. We have a process, again, to get amendments, right? There are people that don't like the fact that there was an amendment so that women could vote. And guess what? We ended up with something like the SAVE Act because we don't want women to vote. Like, literally, but I'm getting off track, so I'm going to go back because I know that Ms. Jayapal wanted some time. So I will yield my time to the gentle lady from Washington. Let me run a tape to remind y'all of the difference of congressional oversight versus criminals.
We're here conducting an oversight visit, which we have the power to do as congressional members. Statutory authority, and so that is what we're here for, and we're waiting to speak to a supervisor to let us in here because
Stand up for our mayor.
We will be your eyes and your ears, and we will report to you, Mayor.
It's interesting that one set of behavior somehow is going to get a family rich overnight. And the other folk that were there in that video, the members of Congress, well, they're saying arrest them. Let me remind you that those January 6ers have been pardoned. Let me remind you that yet another January 6er was just arrested a few days ago for committing what? Another crime. So if we're going to talk about us keeping our streets safe, let's be real about who's causing crimes, who actually went through what we call due process, because no one denied the January 6th insurrectionists of their due process. They went to court, they either pled guilty or were found guilty, and they were sent to prison, and half of them, actually all of them, if their sentences said so, should still be in prison. Because we as Americans would be safer. We won't get into the fact that another one was already in trouble because they had already killed somebody. I will say that the Republicans were right. Democrats lost on immigration. When you look at all the polling, when you talk to people, they lost on immigration. And frankly, I am concerned that we did not have conversations that went beyond just talking about the humanity, because there are people that literally don't care about humanity, which is why we are able to have this administration doing the things that they're doing. Talking about the fact that border crossings are down 95%, well, I don't know if I can trust that number or not. You know why? Because first of all, they've been going out, they've been firing all of the persons that usually deal with data, science, and facts all over in all agencies, in addition to the fact that even if that is a real number, we don't know if they got to that number just because, well, this is a lawless administration that is consistently in violation of people's constitutional rights, the Constitution in and of itself, court orders. So we can't really explain exactly why and how, even if that is true. And at some point in time, you have to say there is a balancing test. Either we are going to follow the law fully or we're not at all. And frankly, what I've seen out of this administration is that they don't want to follow the law. But there is something that you said in your opening remarks that really stuck with me. There was a line that I wrote down. You said, line cooks and landscapers. Now, I have talked to those that are in construction. I have talked to those that are farmers. I have talked to a lot of people that have said that because of the reckless acts of so many of these ICE agents, they can't even get their workers to show up to work because of what they're doing. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong. As somebody that practiced criminal law, I never saw that we needed ICE to go and arrest somebody, say, for murder. Is ICE the only agency that has the authority to arrest somebody, say, if they go out and commit murder?
No, ma'am, they're not. But
what about aggravated robbery?
No, ma'am.
What about rape?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so in fact, 9 times out of 10, the primary arresting agency when it comes to, say, committing a crime such as aggravated robbery, rape, murder, would that be ICE? Would that be the primary arresting and investigatory agency to do that in the first place?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page, because I get a little confused sometimes when we're around here. Now, we have talked about a lot of the kind of back and forth between the branches. And this idea of checks and balances seems to escape certain folk in the chamber. And so I really want to ask you just a couple of questions to make sure I'm not the one that has lost my marbles. Who has the right to conduct oversight? Or let me ask you this way. Does Congress have the power to conduct federal oversight over detention facilities?
Yes, ma'am, and quite frankly, a bit of confusion that I've been hearing today. Oversight by Congress is, of course, mandated by law, but additionally, oversight also not only in the immigration space protects the migrants, but also protects law enforcement and through public safety in making sure they have the resources they need. In my position over 15 years at the department, I oversaw hundreds of visits by congressional members, advocacy groups, immigration groups, law enforcement groups, and in no way did I ever see the sort of situation that we saw in Delaney Hall where there was a powder keg driven by the political theater being driven by the White House.
That's exactly right. And that's actually why I wanted to make sure I talked about the fact that you had credentials and you've actually been in this space. That was not normal. And the idea that they would somehow say that it's their colleagues that were the ones that were driving it, which is why I made sure that I showed video footage of Representative McIver very calmly telling them why she was there. And frankly, it is sad that we do have to go through this kind of political theater because, listen, we all know what it is. That's why they hired everybody from Fox News, because all they trying to do is put on for a show. This is not The Apprentice show. This is supposed to be about the American people, and I want us to start to refocus our attention on the American people and stop demonizing every daggone person that ends up in custody of ICE, because they are not necessarily demons just because ICE decided to round them up. So thank you for your testimony. I don't know why we still arguing about what the Constitution say. I'm still confused. So let me tell you what the Supreme Court had to say. In the decision AARP et al. Versus Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, this is the opinion that came down May 16th, 2025 regarding the Texas situation. It specifically says on page 3, so you don't have to read too far, in paragraph number 2, it says, the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in the context of removal proceedings. And they were quoting Trump v. JGG, which is also a 2025 case. They go on to say procedural due process rules are meant to protect against the mistaken or unjustified deprivation of life, liberty, or property. That's why we've been talking about Abrego. And then the next sentence goes on to say, we have long held that no person shall be removed from the United States without opportunity at some time to be heard. I'd like to enter the Supreme Court decision. I don't even like this Supreme Court. I want to point that out. I would like to enter this into the record for all those that don't understand what the Constitution says. And it's been reaffirmed by, this is Trump's Supreme Court. That's why I don't like it. I'm just being honest. It's been reaffirmed by his Supreme Court. Unanimous consent, Mr. Chair.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I will yield back.